This is gonna take crackerjack timing, Wang.
Total concentration. You ready, Jack?
I was born ready.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time for another comic book review. Today I'm reviewing Dark Knight's Death Metal Trinity Crisis #1, and I'll be honest, I was actually kind of skipping all of the extra issues for Dark Knight's Death Metal after I read the anthology book that had all the really boring origins for most of the new Dark Knights comics. Like I skipped the guidebook. But I decided this week I was going to read this one, even though it's kind of an expensive comic. And I'm glad I did, because I have been reading Dark Knight's Death Metal. And for the life of me, I do not know why this comic book is not Dark Knight's Death Metal #4. This is absolutely crucial if you're enjoying the Dark Knight's Death Metal story. This is a continuation of issue 3, leading into issue 4. I don't know why this isn't a main story issue. It absolutely should be. And I'm glad I did read it also, because it is easily, by far and away, the best issue in Dark Knight's Death Metal so far, which I have enjoyed. But overall, I'm not really impressed with. There's a lot of exposition. There hasn't been a lot of exciting stuff happening, but tons of exciting stuff happens in this comic. But before I get into the details, I do want to say this. If you've been visiting the channel, but you haven't taken the leap, today is the day to subscribe to Thinking Critical YouTube. We have all the best comic book content you could ever want. Comic book news, stories, opinions. We do live streams. I try to kind of cover all my bases here on Thinking Critical YouTube. Also, don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. Give me a big thumbs up if you want more of these reviews on the channel. Give me an enormous thumbs down if you think I'm way off base on Trinity Crisis here, and you didn't think it was all that good, because I really enjoyed this comic book. And I'll tell you why. It is much in the same vein as the rest of the Dark Knight's Death Metal 1 through 3 so far, but with one big difference. The very end of this comic book, we are actually somewhere. They're in the thick of the action, and the heroes are finally fighting for the lives of the entire multiverse. And I couldn't be more excited. And there's actually some fun stuff that happens along the way. The only reason that I can think of that this isn't Dark Knight's Death Metal #4 is because there is a change in artist. It's Francis Manupal and Ian Herring are in, replacing legendary artist Greg Capullo and his colorist FCO Placencia. But otherwise, this feels like another issue within the main series. Like I said, probably the most exciting one. Now let's talk about the art by Francis Manupal. There's actually a lot of great stuff. I kind of feel bad that Craig Capullo didn't illustrate this comic book, because there's a lot more exciting stuff happening in this issue where Francis Manupal really gets to like shake his tail feathers and show you what he's got. There's an opening page that shows all the multiverses and the past battles they've had with the crisis events and stuff like this. It is really cool. And it feels like Greg Capullo so far has been kind of bogged down by a lot of exposition. And that certainly happens here. But like I said, there's more opportunities for the art team to really shine here. And the thing I do want to talk about that I kind of like the most, and there's a lot to like in here. This isn't, I don't think it's quite as good as what Capullo did in issues 1 through 3, but this is still really high-level art. And he does some really cool stuff with Swamp Thing. And if you know me, I think I've talked about it enough here on the channel. I absolutely love the art in Alan Moore's Saga the Swamp Thing by Stephen Bissette. Some of the craziest, most mind-melting comic art I've ever seen in my life. The stuff Stephen Bissette was doing in that series was groundbreaking. It was very experimental. It took comic book storytelling visually to a different level. It demonstrated that artists could bring in expressionism and other styles into comic book art and make it work. You didn't just have to work with your regular panels and stuff. And it appears to me, at least, that Francis Manupal goes out of his way to pay tribute to what Stephen Bissette did in the Saga of the Swamp Thing with some of the cool stuff he does with Swamp Thing in this issue. And of all the stuff that I think Capullo does better than Manupal in the other issues, I think Francis Manupal absolutely kind of schools him with his Swamp Thing. He just looks better even when he's just standing as part of the story. He doesn't quite look. Swamp Thing still looks, kind of burnt up in this issue, and I think it's just a better look for the character within the story. But what he does is they're on a trek, to get into Castle Bat, and I'm going to get into the details of why here in a minute. And it's laced with mines, and they can't get through. and Swamp Thing decides that he's going to go into the green and give them a pathway into Castle Bat. It is just really cool. And this is one page, but it happens over the course of like 2 or 3 pages. And it's really cool. It's awesome. I loved it. And it's really a good example of what Francis Manupal brought to this issue. And I think the art is really good. Not quite Capullo spectacular, but certainly worthy of what Capullo has done in the first 3 issues. And I do think this probably should have been Dark Knight's Death Metal #4. The art is certainly good enough to stand next to what Capullo has done. And the story absolutely falls right in line with that. And let's get to that. There is a big amount of exposition in this comic. There's been an enormous amount of exposition in every one of these Dark Knight's Death Metal comics. But we finally have all the heroes together. They know they're on a quest to get into Castle Bat because they need to siphon some crisis energy off of Perpetua, which is fueling her, and they need to power up Wally West now that he is essentially Dr. Manhattan Wally West, now that he's been on the Mobius chair. So they're talking about it, and this is one of the worst parts of the comic book. I don't know, maybe this will grow on me over time, but they have these boxes, and it's supposed to be like a new version of a mother box where they're going to harness the energy that's in the Dark Multiverse to power up Wally West, and it's called an Alfred box. I get that it's an homage to Alfred. Alfred's no longer with us within DC continuity. I love Alfred as a character, but it feels like a stupid name. Like, I don't see this one catching on. Probably a miss there on Snyder's part. But there is a lot of exposition in this. And when they come up with a plan, and obviously Diane is a leader here, it's typical Scott Snyder. We need to break up. If we go in as a formidable unit, they're going to spot us. So we don't want to be spotted. So we're going to break up into 9 little bitty teams. And 6 of us are going to infiltrate Castle Bat, and then we're going to break up into 3 teams, and 3 of you are going to go to Apocalypse to prepare a throne, and 2 of you are going to go over there, and you're going to be waiting for this other box to harness the energy so you can hike it over to Wally West and power him up, and they're pre-positioning all these teams all over the place. Whatever. It's Scott Snyder. It's a quest. I guess he kind of uses this trope in essentially all of the quests that he does, which is fine. It's a Scott Snyder comic book. So they break up into their teams, and they know they're going to go into Castle Bat so they can infiltrate the Dark Multiverse because they found out that the Batman Who Laughs, and they don't really call him the Batman Who Laughs all the time. Some people call him He Who Laughs. I call him the Batman Who Lolls. He has created 3 crisis planets within the Dark Multiverse that are continuously in crisis, that these heroes have solved in the past, and those crises that are continuously happening within the Dark Multiverse are powering Perpetua. They're just powering her up exponentially, and she's becoming a bigger and bigger foe as she's consuming all the other multiverses. So that's the plan. They're going to get into Castle Bat. They're going to infiltrate the Dark Multiverse, and they're going to save these 3 planets that the Batman Who Lolls has placed in there that is powering up Perpetua. At least that's what I think's happening. I could be wrong. It's a pretty convoluted story, but that's the way I kind of understood it. So as they begin their quest, we get some of the other stuff that's been very prevalent throughout Scott Snyder's Dark Knight's Metal, Dark Knight's Death Metal, and it is these Dark Knights, these weird mashup versions of Batman. Here on the left, as they get to Castle Bat, we see who's protecting it. We got Bat Mazo, the Grim Knight, who we've already seen in a one-shot within the DC universe. I think he was also in the Batman Who Lolls miniseries. Mindhunter, obviously, that's Batman and Martian Manhunter, War Bat. So they're all on the lookout. They're the ones that laid the mines for the team, so they can't get into Castle Bat. Obviously, they do infiltrate it. I hate for that spoiler. There's going to be a lot of spoilers. I'm going to get to even more interesting stuff. But the more interesting characters that they run into are these groups. These are obviously less powerful Dark Knights. We've got Chiropter, Ark, the Pearl, Black Monday, and Cull. And Black Monday is Solomon Grundy, but Batman. And there's some pretty interesting reveals on here that when they do the reveals, it feels like they should have been more impactful. Like it should have impacted the heroes more. Like we learned that the Pearl is actually Batman's mother, like in a mechanized Pearl robot. But he doesn't stop. They just whoop her ass. And then Cull there at the bottom, that is actually the daughter of Batman and Wonder Woman on a Dark Multiverse. And you would have thought that would have stopped the heroes in the tracks, and maybe Superman would have been the one to stop. But they were just like, there's a smirk or like an acknowledgement, and then they kind of defeat her and they get into the Dark Multiverses. Those characters were more interesting than the ones on the left, in my opinion. There were some cool reveals, but they didn't seem to be very impactful, even though it seemed like they should have been. Maybe that will play out later, but that did happen, and that's who those characters are. And I do want to talk about two of the characters that are getting a lot of play in Dark Knight's Death Metal, and are probably really the stars of the show. Obviously, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman are the real stars. They're the Trinity. That's what the comic book is named after. But there's really two characters I think that have stood out. Much like the Batman who lolls, who I personally do not like. I find that character insufferable, but everybody liked that character. So we got a lot more of them. I think we are going to get a ton more Robin King because this character seems to be catching on. He is somewhat funny. He's certainly got a purpose. I thought his origin was a mess. Like, I get the origin. It's Batman as a sociopath as a kid, but they never really explained why he became a sociopath as a kid and killed his parents and killed Alfred, killed everybody. But he's the Robin King, and he's got a plan for everything. Of course, he's Batman. So when he encounters our heroes, we got Jonah Hex, we've got Swamp Thing, we've got Harley Quinn and Jarro in his little amplifying jar. And he's got a plan for all of them. So they end up fighting. I do think this will be the breakout character overall. We're definitely going to see more Robin King at the end when the heroes win. He will somehow escape, and he will become the new Batman who lolls that will bug the crap out of me, but everyone loves him, so it'll be very prevalent in DC Comics. I'm certain of it. But the other character I think that is even better and should be the star, that should be the breakout character, is Jarro himself. Obviously, he was introduced during the Justice League, where he was like a miniature Starro, like Robin, and he wanted to be Robin. He wants to be Batman's best friend or whatever. He's really funny. He is just busting Jonah Hex's decaying balls this entire comic book, and it's probably the most enjoyable thing about it until the revelations we get at the very end. And I think Jarro is a great character. I wouldn't mind seeing a Batman and Robin with Jarro as Robin. I think it would be fun. Hopefully we'll get to see that in a one-shot or some type of miniseries in the Dark Multiverse. But I do think that character is really funny. He's that bit of levity you need in this big world of exposition that you're trying to kind of get through. Jarro's the man, and he's definitely been the best character in the story, for me at least, and I've really enjoyed that. But let's get to the big reveals that we do get at the end, because our heroes, they do get trapped in the Dark Multiverse. They go through the portal, and each of them are going to go to a crisis planet, and then the Robin King shows up, and he does something to our heroes, and our heroes flee, and they say to each other, but they'll never be able to get out of the Dark Multiverse. And I believe it's the Swamp Thing who says, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We have to run now because Robin King is going to kill us all. He's a homicidal maniac. So we do have three heroes trapped on three different crisis worlds within the Dark Multiverse. Batman shows up on the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he immediately realizes everything has changed. And we realize that for all of our heroes. Everything has changed. Whatever the winning scenario that won Crisis on Infinite Earths, that has been undone, and the heroes did not win. Superman, he arrives in Final Crisis, and he realizes that. And Wonder Woman, she arrives in Infinite Crisis, and she realizes that. And then we do finally meet the three big bads, the three main bosses that our heroes have to get through before they can get to Perpetua. Obviously, they are going to power up some Alfred boxes so they can get Wally West ready for the fight. They are trapped right now, and the heroes on the outside, Swamp Thing, Harley Quinn, Jarro, are going to regroup and get these guys out. But they are going to be in absolute hell because, we've got the Anti-Monitor, Darkseid, and Superboy Prime all waiting for these heroes in these crisis planets that are not what they expected them to be. They've been completely altered because the Batman Who Lolls or Perpetua, I can't remember which one it was, sent them to these worlds to prepare them for when the heroes try to undo what he had done. So the best thing about this comic is there's almost no Batman Who Lolls. They talk about him and they acknowledge his existence, but he's not in the comic, and I loved it. That is the second. Actually, that's the second best thing. 2, the reveal here at the end that Bruce is on Crisis on Infinite Earths, Clark is on the Final Crisis, and Diana is on Infinite Crisis. And it was a really great way to end a comic book. This actually has me excited to read the final 4 issues of Dark Knight's Death Metal. I'm enjoying the event, but I'm not loving it. I love this. This is cool. I wish we had gotten here at the end of issue 2 instead of issue 4. This should be Dark Knight's Death Metal number 4. And that is essentially my review. I didn't give everything away, but I certainly gave enough away of the big reveals. There's a lot of stuff going on here. It is still weighed down by exposition, but the ending was absolutely dynamite. I love the art in this. There are some really cool revelations and stuff. This is a much more enjoyable Dark Knight's Death Metal issue than the previous 3. I was recommending those. This is a highly recommend. This is a 4-star comic. I think it was exciting enough to really overcome some of the stuff that has been weighing the other comics down, because a lot more action happens in this. A lot more fun things happen in this comic book. And Francis Manupal really gets to shine in here. He gets to lay out some really cool pages. Hopefully Greg Capullo gets that same opportunity in Dark Knight's Death Metal. Really, I guess it's 4.5, because this really is number 4. Dark Knight's Death Metal 4.5 coming up next month. This is as excited as I've been for Dark Knight's Death Metal since it began. I'm glad I read it. If you thought you could skip this comic book because it wasn't in the main storyline, you absolutely cannot. This is essential reading if you're enjoying the story. If you were going to cut out the tie-ins because you didn't want to spend all the money and they weren't necessary, you've been sold a bill of goods. This is a necessary comic book. I don't know why they marketed it like this. This cannot be skipped. It should be a part of the main story. It really is a part of the main story. And that is my review. I really enjoyed this. You know, it's tough sledding to getting through the beginning, but once you get to that first half and you get into the action and shit finally actually happens, it's well worth the wait. And this is a really good comic book. DC is off to a much better start this week than they were last week. And I think they got a lot of good stuff going on with Flash, with this comic here, obviously. I did read Superman. It wasn't as bad as the one before. So even it got an upgrade from Brian Michael Bendis. So hope you enjoyed today's comic book review, and I'll see you all later.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.